I am Chris Gray, the Chief Technology Officer of RENU Communities. We are a subsidiary of Taurus Investment Holdings, and we implement decarbonization solutions at existing real estate assets under the Taurus portfolio. RENU Communities is implementing EV chargers really based on the type of asset that we're working with. Our strategy changes whether it's a multifamily property, an office property, or an industrial property, really based on the unique and independent needs of that particular building type. For multifamily, that's basically people's homes, right? That's where people spend a good majority of their day, and their cars are parked for long periods of time. So we are implementing EV chargers with an approach that allows people to park in one spot if they want to, but there's penalties for idling in one spot or sitting in one spot. So we're thinking through the infrastructure in multifamily really to optimize the number of chargers that we have for a lot of pending electric vehicles. And we're trying to plan for the expansion of electric vehicles as they enter the market. In office buildings, we are targeting certain percentages of our parking spaces to be electrified or have electric vehicle charging so that we can ensure charging is there. But we don't anticipate all occupants of an office building to need to charge at the same time. In the industrial sector, it's pretty unique because we have a combination of passenger vehicles as well as heavy vehicle transportation. We're starting to see Class 6 box trucks that are readily available for electrification, and we're seeing tenants begin to demand the electric charging infrastructure for heavy vehicles. So we're planning up front for the passenger vehicles, knowing that that's ready today, and then we're thinking about future proofing the buildings with the infrastructure, the conduits, et cetera, in place for the coming age of electrification of very heavy vehicles all the way up to tractor trailers. Every asset type has its own unique challenges associated with deploying EV infrastructure. For multifamily, for example, you have to think about where the charger is going to be located and where do you have the infrastructure available to deploy chargers. On a lot of multifamily buildings, you have common area spaces such as a leasing office where you have access to a common area meter to run the infrastructure from. But then you have distributed buildings on garden style multifamily where you do not have a common area meter. And so you have to think about how you're going to locate your infrastructure so it can be pulled back to a common point of electricity service, or you have to think about running new electric services from building to building. So the planning becomes, where is your infrastructure and how do you get the electric capacity from a location where you can access behind a meter to where the metering points are? And then how do you distribute that throughout the property? Similarly, on office, there are obstacles related to where do you place the charging. Where is your electrical infrastructure inside of a parking deck or outside of a building, and where do you have to trench to get the electrical infrastructure to where you need it? And then also, how do you make it most visible and accessible for the occupants and the tenants of the building? Industrial is its own unique case again. There are multiple obstacles, mostly related to how much infrastructure do you need. Obviously, passenger vehicles, you can balance your charging rate with how many vehicles are connected to your charging system, and there are software technologies available to allow you to vary the amount of electrical demand to really meet the needs of the existing infrastructure and how many cars are connected. When you start to talk about tractor trailer type charging and DC fast charging for the very, very heavy fleets of electric vehicles, you now have to think about what existing infrastructure is in place from the local utility, what size are your transformers, and you have to think about infrastructure on a whole different level. The EPA has been pushing for electric vehicles for a couple of decades now, really looking at low emissions vehicles. And electric vehicles are the ultimate low emission vehicle, right? And we see the significant impacts of the projected regulation starting in the model year 2027, where you have significant reductions in smog and tailpipe pollution averages. And so, as a corporate manufacturer looking at your corporate average fuel efficiency, when you have to hit those significant amounts of reductions, you have to start blending in electric vehicles and zero emitting vehicles in order to meet those standards, because existing internal combustion engines just can't meet them. And so it's a roundabout way of controlling what's produced by the manufacturers without telling them to produce electric vehicles. And it's really supported by other recent action as well, such as the Inflation Reduction Act, where you have such significant support and incentives for light vehicle, electric vehicle rebates and incentives. When you combine those together, it makes electric vehicles kind of the obvious choice and the easy default choice in the market, which is really one of the successes of these two regulations, is that it makes it a no-brainer for the consumer to choose electric. There are some asset types that appear easier than others to install electric vehicle charging. Home, for example, a single family home, you have your electric panel, you connect your charger in the garage, and we think about chargers as, this box that has to be connected to the electric panel and put on the wall. But charging comes in a number of different forms: level 1, level 2, level 3, DC fast charging, right? You have different forms of charging that really meets the need of any real estate type. So it's really driven by how many vehicles do you have that need to charge, how quickly do they need to charge, and then what is the infrastructure that's available to you. Most people drive, I've seen averages from 11 to 20 miles one way to work. And when you have electric vehicles that have ranges from 150 to 400 miles, everyone doesn't need to charge all day long at the same time, right? You don't put gasoline in your internal combustion car every single day. So you have to think about how many people are really going to need charging at the particular location. Offices and homes are probably where vehicles stay the most, and so you have to think about long-term charging. That's probably where most people will charge, either at home or at work. So different real estate types are better positioned just because of where their vehicles are. Now, then you start to think about retail shopping, and you'll have vehicle chargers spread out everywhere just because of the sheer number of chargers that we're going to need as all vehicles are electrified. But I think there are solutions for every single building type, including industrial, that we're working on right now. Now, there are situations where you have local incentives in different states, which makes it more attractive to install EV chargers up front quicker. So in Massachusetts, we're currently taking advantage of a state program with the investor-owned utilities that will pay up to 90% of the cost of installing EV infrastructure. And so we're deploying that very readily at properties in Massachusetts, and other states have very similar programs where we're installing them. But the process, as long as you don't have to go through utility infrastructure upgrades, is pretty straightforward. It's just like adding any other electrical circuit in most cases.